Hey everybody, Buzz Miller of Wannabe Studios. Today's kind of a tech lesson. If you're not into that, please feel free to skip it. And like everybody else says, hey, please subscribe and like and all that kind of stuff. My content isn't that great, so feel free not to like it and feel free not to subscribe to it. But today we're going to talk about a few things that I like to do to guitars to make them sound better, play better, sustain better, project better, etc., etc., etc. So if you're into that kind of thing, hang on, let's see what happens. So a lot of people recently have been fairly impressed with this guitar. Again, I bought it off of eBay. It was at a pawn shop. It was missing some strings. It was missing whammy bar. It was not in tune. The Floyd was all whacked. But we did some amazing things to it. It plays amazing and it sounds really pretty good. Some people want to know the details of what I've done to these guitars to make them do what they did, because they were really raggedy and pretty beat up. So I'm going to go through the three things that I think are the biggest advantages that you can make to the guitar you currently have in the sound aspect. So we're going to go through what they are, and then I'm going to talk about a few other things. I'm going to bring some old videos in, so this video is going to have terrible production value. I hope it gives you the information that you want. The first thing we're going to talk about is neck joints. A lot of the companies started making a thinner neck joint so we could have better fret access, upper fret access, not hit our thumbs quite as hard. You don't have that big ugly piece of wood. So let's take a peek at what Ibanez did. Ibanez did what they call the AANJ. Now, if you look, this has been laid back, so now you don't have as big of a bump to strike with your thumb when you're trying to go up to the super high fret access. It also caves in, it also fades off that way, so you have a lot more room on that side. Now what this does is it makes a more comfortable guitar for us to play. Here's the problem. It makes a weaker neck joint. I'm sure all of you saw the videos 15 years ago or so, Paul Gilbert saying, I can't play these. They don't sustain well enough. So he started doing bigger neck joints, and then he started doing the neck through guitars. Then he started doing giant headstocks to try to get more sustain out of the acoustic properties of the electric guitar. He didn't like these. He thought these killed the sustain, the projection. And again, you can bleed off sustain. You can't create it where it doesn't exist, especially with a sound like his, where you've got a lot of mids and highs, a lot of presence, but not a truckload of distortion. I was watching Herman Lee. Herman Lee was doing something. He tuned a guitar and then he laid it flat and it went out of tune. Why is that? It's not because the neck is bending. We think that that's it, but it's not. Oh, the neck is too thin. Well, necks actually don't bend as much as you think they do when you're looking at those kinds of things. When you do this with a straight edge on the neck, you find out that it's here in the neck joint. So if we can beef that up, we are actually making it stronger against moving. If it's moving this way, when you just put the weight of the body and the weight of the tuners on it, then what it's doing is it's not giving you the vibrations through everything like you want. We need to stiffen that up to get the projection, to get the sustain, to get the notes to ring like we want. If we can get them to ring like we want, the guitar is going to sound better than it did before. Especially when you're dealing with clean tones, especially when you're dealing with that just start of breakup with a little bit of a compressor on the front of it. Those sounds are a huge difference when you beef the neck joint up. We're going to go for the story. The story is, I built this guitar. This guitar had everything. It had the right Ibanez edge on it. I paid a truckload for it. It had the newest, latest, greatest pickups. It had a body that was all made out of a super mahogany, and it had an actual Ibanez neck. I did not make this neck. And I put stainless frets in it, and I wired it special, and everything's push-pull to split coils. It's got 2 different gains, one for each pickup, all sorts of stuff. And I went to play it, and it's dead. And I'm going, these pickups suck. And then I did the trick, and it's going way out of tune. Well, this isn't an S body. This isn't super thin. This shouldn't have that problem, but it did. It had the problem bad. Well, I had the same exact body in a poplar over here. Not the superest Floyd, or Edge in this case, Evolution pickups, but very similar. Again, we're push-pull, gain-gain, 3-way, exactly the same as this. This projected acoustically wonderful. This one was pathetic. This one sustained wonderful. This one was pathetic. This is the first guitar I ever tried to drill and put something in the neck joint. I actually put tungsten in the neck joint on this one and found out that tungsten isn't the way to go. The way to go is carbon fiber. Put the things in. I didn't even paint over them. They're still sitting here raw. Don't know if you can see the holes. They're not very big either. So I put those in there and I went boom. And the first chord I hit, I went, oh, I made a difference. That made a change. I can tell. I don't even have to plug it into an amp. I can tell. Well, then these pickups started making sense. This guitar started making sense. I could actually play it, because before it was a piece of art on the wall that just looked stupid. That's when I learned doing this makes a big difference. So what I do, I drill a hole, start through the neck joint and go right down to here. Sometimes I'll actually blow through on purpose, and then I'll put a piece of tape up in there. I'm going to fill it with carbon fiber glue and then throw some carbon fiber in there. I'll show you how I'm going to do that later. I drill a hole right through here and I put it right to about here. There is either a really deep groove of wood grain right here, or maybe a light crack in the body. Either way, we're starting way over here. We're going through these 2 bolts and we're going over through here. That is going to beef up and won't let that crack, if it is a crack, develop. Again, some of these cheap bodies are cheap pieces of wood. We need to beef them up. So let me show you exactly. In fact, we'll show you in the black guitar, because we did the same exact thing to it. 2 holes, 1 through here, 1 through here. This is a 3-piece body. See the groove in here? I'll show you some pictures. And when I take the top off, I'll show you that. So, show you my piece of carbon fiber to show you where the drill is. The first one goes in here. And, well, the first one will go like this. Burp. So that goes right about to there. So we're going to stop just shy of that. I didn't blow through on this one. So we're going to go just shy. This hole here, holding it backwards, is going to go in about that far. So again, I'm through that 3rd piece, so that's going to tie these 2 pieces together. So let me show you how this is going to work, because this is crazy. I usually use some different carbon, but I'm going to show you how to do it with arrows. So there's 2 different sizes of arrows you can get from Walmart or Amazon or whatever, carbon fiber arrows. There's a larger and a smaller. The larger actually fits around the smaller. The smaller will fit inside of it. So we're going to put this in first. I've got the holes drilled to be a little bit bigger than this. We're going to fill it with glue, put the first arrow in, then we're going to put the second arrow in, then we're going to take this 3rd piece of carbon fiber, put it in, and then the last thing we're going to do is take this 4th piece of carbon fiber to go down the center of this. So in between each layer is going to be carbon fiber glue, but we're going to have 4 different independent pieces of carbon. That's going to stiffen that neck joint up. That's going to make sure all the multiple pieces of this body never come apart, and it adds beef to that neck joint. What I like to do is I like to take, in fact, we're going to do this 2 ways. If you're a little more advanced, or if you're a beginner. If you're a beginner and you've never done this before, go to Amazon and get a piece of carbon. They make them in super thick, they make them in super thin. You can get them as thin as a pencil lead, or way bigger than a pencil. Find whatever piece you want because you've got a lot of meat. We're going to drill one if you're a beginner. You drill one hole. You come in through here. You don't poke through the front side for sure. Don't poke through the back side. That's why you want a little bit bigger piece of carbon, is because you want a bigger drill bit that's not going to flex on you. We'll talk about that on the headstocks in just a second. One piece of carbon drilled down through there, even if you're going to as close as you can back here, but if you blast out the back, that's fine. You get all the dust out, you put a piece of tape over the back. You set it up, you put fiberglass resin. It's called marine resin. What it is, it's a vinyl ester resin for fiberglass stuff. You can find it at Home Depot, Ace Hardware, wherever. Get it, mix it up like it says, pour some in there, not too much, because when you put the rod in, it's going to go all over the place. Don't get it on your fingers and stuff. It doesn't come off real well. Pour it, you got your tape back there, and then on the outside of your carbon rod, you're going to rough it up because the resin's going to want to be able to stick to something. You can rough it up with sandpaper, or you can rough it up with a file and just kind of hag a bunch of edges so there's something to grab on so it can't slip, it can't move. That's if you're a beginner. That's the number one. Now I do one through this way. Sometimes I'll do one through this way, and then I do one through this way. Now I usually do one through this way, and I end up having to drill through them for the last one, and I put this one in last. Number two we're going to go to is blocking out the Floyd. This does two things. The first thing that it does is helps in the resonance, helps in the sustain, helps in the projection. The second thing is it gives you stability. It gets you away from that terrible Floyd Rose float. The cheaper Floyds have a problem where you go down and it'll stay low, and then you pull it up and it'll stay high. This solves that, and it brings more of the vibration through the body. First thing you do is you get your Floyd Rose set up where you want it. You get your height, your pitch, and all of your springs are set where you want them. Then you take a measurement between this piece of wood, the flat piece here, and where the block of your Floyd is. You're going to cut a piece of metal that's exactly that thick, or weld a piece together, however you're going to do it. Basically, you're going to get a piece of metal that's the same exact distance as the measurement between the flat of this and the flat of this. You're going to take it and you're going to bolt it to the block on your Floyd. Once you do that, you countersink into here so everything's flat. Now, you can still dive bomb. So, you dive bomb down, and then every time it comes back up, the block now hits the flat part of the body. What does that do? Once it's there, to make sure everything's right, you actually add tension to the springs so it's actually pulling against the body. It's doing a couple of things. Number one, it's taking some of the force off of the two posts on the other side, which take all of the beating of a Floyd. This is a cheap Chinese body. This one was actually drilled crooked, so I re-drilled these and I put a sleeve in that has the metal piece across with both receivers in it that you buy from Floyd Rose. So it's got that in it now, but these posts get beat up. Now that you take more spring pressure, that now is becoming a third point of connection. Now the vibrations from the string are getting in through the body, and there's less places for this to become a shock absorber, so you're getting more of your vibrations from your string all through the body. Now, does it make a difference in how your pickups sound? Not really, but it does make a difference in your sustain, in your projection, that type of thing. And like I said, you can't make sustain. You can only bleed it off. So that's number two, is blocking out your Floyd. I used metal. Nuno used wood. I don't know what Eddie used. Number three, beefing up the headstock. This is not necessary. This does a very small amount of change. I like doing it both because of the feel, and I figure if I'm going to be hacking everything up and repainting anyway, might as well. So when I say put tungsten in the headstock, what I'm talking about welding rod, TIG welding rod. If you're going to be welding with me on a race car, you really have to buy the good welding rod. If you're doing this for a guitar, you do not buy cheap junk from China tungsten. What you're looking for is the mass and the fact that it's very brittle and strong. When you try to break it, it's not going to want to break, and it's not going to bend. Once you get it to the point, it will break. So here's what I do. Start with 1. If you're real courageous, you can do 2. Always go with the thicker of the tungsten. Don't go really small. Why? This is a maple neck. This is hard to drill. To get a little itty bitty drill bit that's the size of some of the thinner tungsten is going to be a really flexible, really crazy drill bit. It's going to be all over the place. That is not what you want. Why is it not what you want? Because you're going to be drilling and it's going to come through the top, or you're going to be drilling and it's going to go out the back. That happens. It's not a bad thing, especially if you're going to paint over it anyway. So here's what you're going to do. I drill for tungsten. I take some really cheap tungsten that I get. I wouldn't weld with it, but it's welding rod. I drill 1 hole that goes pretty much like this here. And then I drill 2 holes through here. One that stays real tight to the tuning pegs, but doesn't go in very far. It goes in about there. And then one that comes out through here that goes through the edge. And so again, a little carbon fiber glue. I rough the outside of this up so it's got something to grab to the carbon fiber glue. I throw them in there. They're already drilled and everything. I don't want to stuff them in there because I can't get them back out. So I throw the glue in there. I tap these in as far as they go, and I'll have them cut to size so they don't hang out. And that adds some strength, but also adds mass to the end of the headstock. If you ever see some of George Lynch's real guitars, especially the originals, like the original Snakes and Skulls, he actually sometimes takes a piece of steel and puts it between the headstock and the tuning pegs. And the tuning pegs don't fit right after he does that. But it gets, for basses mostly, it gets rid of some dead spots in the middle of the neck, but it also adds, again, the percussiveness and sustain. He liked that. He threw that in a bunch of his old guitars. And so this is the clean way to do it. It doesn't look awful. Because once you paint over the outside, nobody even knows they're there. They just realize there's some mass to that headstock. And when you're playing it, you've got a little more sustain than you're used to. You go, huh, what's that from? Now we're going to talk very quickly about 3 things to make your guitar play the way you want. Get the back of the neck the feel you want. If it's kind of sticky, we got ways to fix that. If it's too rough for you, we got ways to fix that. This is the thing you're going to touch the most on any guitar. If the back of the neck doesn't feel right, make it feel right. If it's a guitar you've always wanted, if it's this guy's or this girl's signature model, you can change the back of the neck. A little bit of sandpaper. I've got a really in-depth detailed sanding the back of the neck. Go through my videos. It's called Painted Guitar Necks Suck or something like that. And it talks about all the different grits of sandpaper and what they're going to do. You can also just take a Scotch-Brite pad, Scotch-Brite the back of it, make it rough so any of the real high gloss will let your thumb zing up and down the back of the neck. Again, gloss necks tend to get sticky when you start getting sweaty. So when you're playing out, when you're playing for a long time, when you're under heavy lights and stuff like that, that's when it starts to get bad. If it starts to get bad when you're playing live, just Scotch-Brite that thing, just sand it, make it feel like you want it to feel. Frets are number 2. You don't really touch them as much, but that's when you bend, you're going to know. That's when you're making a chord, you're going to know. Do you like big, tall, jumbo frets? Fretting a guitar is not that expensive. I always say go to stainless, get your fret job right once and you never touch it again. That's why I love stainless, because it feels good as okay, but get your fret job right once and don't ever touch it again. Somebody was saying that Eddie Van Halen was refretting his guitars 4 different times in one tour. That's how hard he was on frets, and he likes really thin frets anyway, so he was going through them way too fast. He went to stainless. Now you don't need to change them. And then the third thing is your arm cut. If your guitar does not fit you, if you hate the very edge, even if it's got a kick, just grab some sandpaper, get a file, round that thing down. If you don't like the way your guitar feels, you're not going to play guitar. You're not going to practice as much. You're not going to love that guitar. Sometimes somebody picks something up and goes, whoa, I don't know what it is about this guitar, but it's just magic. Usually when they grab a magic guitar, it has rounded edges. And they think that it's magic because something just says, wow, this is way more comfortable. Cut that. You saw John Petrucci for a while was doing like a weird scallop thing to give his forearm room. Well, that's great, except for the fact that your forearm's different from when you're sitting to where you're standing up. So just round the whole thing. From a couple of guitars that I've done recently, I've kept these edges sharp, and then I've rounded this edge, and nobody knows. Nobody sees it. Nobody says, wow, that looks really weird. Why is it rounded right here and sharp everywhere else? If you like the look of sharp, but you don't like the feel of sharp, round that. No one will ever know, partly because while you're playing, you're covering it, but it hangs on the wall. And even, I had a guitar maker in here not too long ago. He didn't see some of the things that I've got where these edges stayed super sharp and super aggressive, and this was all super rounded. Like it didn't have even an edge on the back. It was so rounded over here that these two edges didn't exist. It just kind of morphed into one. Those are the things to make, the three things to make your guitar feel right. If it feels right and sounds right, it doesn't matter what's on the headstock. It doesn't matter what color it is. It doesn't matter the pickups. It can be the guitar you want it to be. So those are my 3 and 3, we'll call it. 3 things to make it sound better, 3 things to make it feel better. Thanks for watching. Keep on rocking. This is Buzz Miller of Wannabe Studios. This is probably the last video I'm going to do in this studio. I'm moving, so we'll catch you later. Catch you in about a month and a half. Keep on rocking, baby.